Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here is a quote that I picked just for this episode. I am a forest and a night of dark trees, but he who is not afraid of my darkness will find banks full of roses under my cypresses. Friedrich Nietzsche. Our good friend, Christine Beckwith, founder 2020 Vision for Success Coaching, is back for part 3 of Finding Honor, author of multiple books. And today we're talking about Finding Honor, chapter 3, Salvation. I'm going to just read something that we can kick this off, Christine, and have questions around. On page 19, I am no longer afraid to speak this truth. I am no longer afraid to write this truth. This path will lead me to salvation. Chapter 3, Salvation.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for highlighting this body of work, because I have recently really worked hard to align myself with what do I want most from the remaining years of my life, which is kind of the miles beyond people finding their purpose. I think somewhere in the middle of our life, we find our purpose, but I think we start to see the over the hill aspect of our live years, and you're like, what are we doing with the rest of this time? Like, is this really the best use of my time? And so I want to tell you, I really want my body of work for writing to be elevated, and you're doing that with this podcast. So I just want to say thank you and show gratitude for it, because it is an area that is under appreciated in my lifetime of the work that I've done. So salvation, it's funny. I'm going to go backwards before I go forward with the answer. And I'm going to tell you that, I don't want to give away the end of the book. The end of the book was created because a few days after I finished the book, and ironically, yesterday, the memory came up on my Facebook. So I had finished Finding Honor a year ago yesterday. There was a video that I put out that said, I am under 48 hours of completing this book. What is so sad about that video memory is that I didn't know sitting there that my sister was about to die. And she did die a week later. So I finished the book, and a few days later she died. And so I immediately went back to the book. I had like 7 days. We had a publishing date of October 11th. So you can do the math on the calendar. Today is September 1st. And so, now I had to do the final read through fast. And that meant going back and reading through the book, which is really hard when you write a book for 2 years, by the way, to sit and reread everything you've written, because you probably read it like 1,000 times, but you're trying to read it clean slate. And I had to stay focused in my grief, in the period of my grief with my sister's loss. The end of the book ends up being changed because of my sister dying. And I can't put an exclamation point more on the fact that the chapter Salvation was written before she died, but while she was dying. And that as I was writing it, I was truthfully writing my philosophical stance on why we work on ourselves, why we try to better ourselves, why we try to cure ourselves of inner ailments, why we try to solve the Rubik's Cube of our emotional spider webs that we weave in life, where we're dysfunctional in areas and functional in other areas and all that, where our vices come in and creep in, where we right our wrong, etc. And somehow in writing this chapter, I was saying, like, this work to save ourselves, to be in our best light to ourselves in the mirror, it is vital to do this work. And not when you're 80, but when you're 30. Because you don't know if you're ever going to see 80. My sister died at 56 years old. Interestingly, because I was writing this chapter, Salvation, she and I were spending a lot of time together in her final year, and I was sharing my writing. And believe it or not, in this chapter, Salvation, I caught her attention, because she was at the end of her life, and she knew she was. And she had not done the 20 years of self-development and the 10 years of concentrated coaching that I had done to get where I was writing the book. And here she was at the end of her life, and she felt very much like the clock was ticking in her ear to forgive her killers, to let go and find peace with where she was headed, to forgive herself, to ask for redemption spiritually, because she was a religious person as well. And I have to tell you, I bore witness to her doing this in her final days. I actually have her telephone after she died. I was in possession of her telephone, and I can see apologies that she wrote to people that I'll use the word hated for wrongdoings against her whole life. People that she had damned to Survivor Island and never spoke to for 30 years previous to her dying, she wrote, "I forgive you." She gave them one of the greatest gifts that she ever could, because she understood that her peace could only come in her ability to forgive her killers. And that included her ex-husband and her son's father, who ultimately was the reason that she had attempted suicide, was found by my mother on the threads of her life, saved, but with massive organ damage from ODing on a cabinet full of household pain medication like Tylenol and all that would never recover. She did that, and they gave her 90 days to live, and she lived for 5 years. And so to say I forgive you to the person who put you at such demise is a tremendous thing to witness, I will tell you. And so I write in the end of the book about salvation, but I write in this beginning of the book about salvation. And her gift back to me, it's like reciprocal. I write in this book, man, that writing this book emphasized all the things I was writing about. I mean, what is that called? Is that irony? I don't know what that is. But yeah, it's my life is forever changed by writing this book. My life is forever changed by the things that happen in and around this book. Salvation is a journey for us to reach a peaceful place. I am so light these days. Like, I can't explain it. I feel like I've been walking around the world for years and years and years, very heavy, in heavy, deep, dark thinking. And I'm not anymore. Like, I'm walking through the hallways of my home sometimes, and I'm like light as a feather. Like, physically, I feel like if there was music that was appropriately being played, and this was being, filmed as a scene out of my life, it would have a very like pomp and circumstance type sound to it, because I am very light. It's not to say I don't have moments of grief, and I don't have moments of sorrow or angst or anxiousness or any of the things that are normal spectrums of feelings that come and go in day-to-day stresses. I'm saying overall, I've unchained myself, in the last decade from the boulders I was dragging behind me, of guilt and whatnot. I will add an ending on this question that I recently read the 4 agreements. I don't know how I made it to this point in my life without reading this book, but I did. In the opening of the book, it says the human animal is the only animal on earth that will mentally persecute itself for a mistake 1,000 times. That it's not normal. Like, usually if we, F up, or if people, the logical thing is, if you F up, you made a mistake, you feel bad about it, you apologize, and you correct path. Maybe you make a commitment. I'm never going to do that again. Some sort of affirmation that puts a nail in the coffin of belief of your inner system that you're going to, improve and correct from it. But that's not how we operate. What we do is we damn ourselves over and over and over, and we dwell on our mistakes, and we also are damned by our partners in life. If we have a husband or a wife or a spouse and we hurt them, a lot of times for the length of the relationship, they're reminding us of our mistakes. And the problem with both of those activities is that we can't heal and ever become whole, because we are collecting mistakes as humans. We're collectors of pain. We're collectors of our wrongdoings. We have some black book sitting somewhere that, is our fucking lifetime, our lifetime of egregiances. And this book is telling you that you can't do that. Like, the agreements you need to make with yourself is that you rectify the wrong, you accept your wrongdoing, you make peace with your wrongdoing, and you move forward, closing that chapter, having learned a lesson. And it doesn't say never to speak about it again. It just says, let it go, and move on. And I have found that I had been living my whole life to the point where I meet you in the beginning of the book, and I was re-damning myself for my mistakes. I was. And so I'm glad that I figured it out, and I've let myself out of my jail, and I'm living a easier life now, because I realize that I am reborn. I am recommitted to living a more integral life these days. So many of us are. And I'm never going to say I'm never going to make mistakes again. I'm just going to tell you that, all of this stuff, man, and what these lessons, I'm teaching these lessons. Like, the gift truly is not just what it did for my life or my sister's life. She died in peace. And I'm going to tell you, by the skin of her teeth did she save herself. And what I mean by that is, she hadn't been praying. She hadn't been. But when she died, I found her Bible that now sits in my living room with her name inscribed on it next to her in her little cabinet, exactly to the left of where she sat in her recliner where she was sick for so long. And I didn't know this until her calling hours, that there was a pastor that was coming to sit and read to her regularly from the Bible at the hospital. And that Bible now sits next to her urn. And I'm reading the Bible for the first time in my life, her Bible, and I'm journaling what I'm learning. And it's beautiful. The whole connectivity of all of it, watching her be at peace, is really beautiful. At her calling hours, the night of her calling hours, she was really funny. She was super cynical funny. Like, she had this cynical sense of humor that would just make you freaking laugh. She always had something really funny to say about everything. Like, and I can hear her voice sitting here, like the funny jokes she would crack. And she had asked me on the very last ride that we were on to go buy jelly jars or something. She said, we need to buy something that I can leave with a note to some of these people that I've lived with in this hospital, because I've been a bitch to all of these people. And she goes, and really bad to a few of them. And I need to buy some apology. She goes, what do you think? And we were at the farm stamp. So I said, what about a jar of jam? And she said, great idea. And it was September, so we were going into fall, and fall is synonymous with like the fair, and jam is a thing, right? In New England. And so, she set these jars of jam outside the doors of the people that she felt she had wronged. And I wondered if she did this, by the way, because I dropped her off at the hospital with her bag of jars. She had note cards. She said she had note cards, and she died 5 days later. And she never told me that week I got the jars out, or I wrote the thing. When she died and we were clearing her apartment, I didn't find them. So I made the assumption. But when the night of her calling hours, as the people flowed through, they kept saying, I just got a jelly jar from her.
That's awesome.
And I don't know why, but it lightened the night for me, and it was like a jackpot, because it would be like 10 people would go through the line, and then the next person would be like, I just got a jelly jar. And then 5 more people would go through the line and would be like, I got a jelly jar. And I just smiled to myself, because it was like she was speaking to me. It meant that the work that we did together, the discussions we had, she listened to. I'm sorry. She was working really hard. And even a week after she died, her doctor called me and said she had made an appointment to get in to do some mental wellness meetings.
Wow.
And she had refused mental wellness meetings for like years. We were trying to help her with her depression, and she would not go. She would not go. We fought with her and she would not go. And the fact that the doctor said she called, it just was like, and even though she never got there, the fact that she was on that path for me was so meaningful. Like the power we have to save each other. So, I mean, this chapter is important if to the reader, if you're really going to go on the journey, and it does belong at the beginning of this book, because people need, it sets the stage for the whole book. Why am I talking about all these dark things in this book? You know, well, I'm telling you what I had to turn and face, you know, to overcome and move beyond. And I don't know, it's part of the honesty, right? It's part of our honesty in ourselves.
His name is Tom, not Tim. She said. I wonder why nobody for months had ever corrected me. During the time I knew Tom, I must have called him by the wrong name dozens of times. I was embarrassed. I wish Tom himself had told me the very first time I misspoke. But here we were, months down the road, and Tom and I had built a relationship on falsehood, and it stung and made me scratch my head too. Why is it important to speak up in those circumstances?
That's a really light start to a deep topic. I didn't want to dive into the deep end of the pool on this whole chapter. We get there, right? This chapter gets deep. I just started deeply with you. The idea here is honesty, which is the relationship of this book. Like I had a really poor relationship with conflict leading up to meeting you, and I was in dire conflict when I met you, meaning I was battling people. I have always been an honest, real, truthful person. I am born from a woman who is brutally honest to the point where it embarrasses me. And even though I'm not that, like, I think there's a time to say things. I think honesty is great. It has its place. You know, I mean, it's, you know, we don't need to confess, you know, certain things at the Thanksgiving dinner table is what I'm saying. Like, we need to like decide when we're going to say stuff. And so, but I've always had a great relationship with honesty. My mother once put me in, grounded me for 30 days because I broke up with a young boyfriend when I was like 15 years old, because she felt like it was a breaking of a commitment and I was hurting someone. And I was like, I didn't understand it at all. Like logical reasoning was like, Mom, I don't want to be with this boy anymore. I don't like this boy as much as I thought I did. I'm changing my mind. And I didn't understand it at 15 years old. And she was teaching me a lesson of loyalty. Wow. And even though she accepted that I was breaking up with this boy, she wanted me to reflect upon the hurt I was putting on him. And so I was grounded for 30 days over this breakup. Today, as a grown woman, I have to thank my parents for really making me at least have a relationship with my word.
Powerful.
Yeah. And knowing that my mother and father, you know, really had to figure out this parenting thing from a teenage level. It really speaks to their character and their upbringing and the old ways of that type of generational, you know, that's what people put their stock in. I had an aunt that died about a decade ago, and they left me her family Bible, which was such an incredible gift to get in her passing. And I have that Bible in my bedroom. And I was leafing through the Bible one day, and I found this little envelope thingy, this little, like, almost, do you remember in the old days? You probably don't, you're too young, but there used to, back in the day, if you had a savings account, you had a passbook. Okay. And the passbook went in a sleeve, if you will.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay. So those would go in your purse. Well, this was a miniature one of those with a little sleeve and a little book in it. And when you pulled the book out, it was a payment book to the local market in the farm town that my great aunt grew up in from my grandfather, which was her youngest brother. There was 8 of them. She was one of the older sisters, and he was the baby of the 8. He was my father's father. His name is on the book. She was using it as a book mark for her Bible. And it was $2 a week for an ice box, which must have been an old time. And it was 1941. It was marked 1941. What dawned on me looking at this is that there was no banks and loans back then. You bought an ice box from the market. The market said it was $40. You said you could pay $2 a week. You shook hands. And then every week, and what was interesting is there's a handwritten note that says $2 and somebody's initials at the market. And you could see my grandfather went every single Friday, probably right after he got paid, gave the $2 and signed the thing. And so I guess I'm just saying our word needs to be impeccable. And so to your point of the opening writing in the book, you know, I have a great relationship with the truth. People see me as, I don't know what the right word is. I'm at a loss of words. People see me as combative. Sometimes people see me as not contradictory, but, and not conflicted. It's a C word, but like, I can, you know, I'm somebody they know if they speak a lie to me, I'm probably going to call them out. I don't know what the word for that is. Like people know I'm honest. People trust me. I have a lot of confidential information that is brought to me. And I know it's really seriously confidential and it could hurt a whole organization or a person pretty badly. I have the leaders of large banks that will call me and vent in a place that they know it's not going anywhere. I'll die with a thousand, you know, secrets of institutions and men, because I am the place that they can come, kind of like a priest, I would say. Very much. I don't want to compare myself to a priest, but I do want to say it is like that you can sit at my altar 100% and you can tell me, you know, I could get the most sensational information about gossip inbound today. And it's not going to be like my old self would call 5 people because it was so juicy and I knew it was good. It was good, you know, currency between girlfriends and stuff. And today I see that as such an incredible gift that people place that trust in me. And I don't sensationalize no matter how dramatic or wow factor the information is. And I really sit in trying to give good advice. And so
why do you see that as, what do you see in that? Why do you see that as important?
I just think that, well, there's several things. I mean, for one, everybody needs to stop avoiding conflict and speaking the truth. This political correctness, for lack of a better word, is killing us. It's causing a tremendous mental illness. We're stuffing grief, we're stuffing angst, we're stuffing hurt, we're stuffing, you know, work problems. You know, everybody's sitting at a boardroom saying, yes, okay, approved, good, it's great, you're wonderful. You know, we're in some award, you know, level where everybody gets a trophy and everybody is patted on the back and everybody's idea is great and nobody challenges the norm. And so companies fall and people fall apart and relationships fall apart because of the shallowness of the conversation. If people want to get healthy, if you want to get your kids ready to leave your nest, you got to be willing to stand in the fight with your kids when it's warranted. I hate fighting with my son, hate it. And I could easily see where I would just go along to get along with him. I want him to be happy. I want to give him everything I never had. But there are times when he shows lack of character in his youthfulness that makes me fight with him. And it's that going back to getting grounded because I broke up with my boyfriend at 15 thing. I see that as a moment where I'm planting a seed that I'm not going to be there in a couple of years. He may do this, repeat this thing he just did. And when he does, I want there to be a level of guilt and inward thinking that I did wrong. And I want him to know he needs to correct. And so how do we teach this to our children? You know, if we keep making these kids soft and they come into our businesses and our worlds ill-equipped, no calluses, no emotional calluses, you know, they're all anxiety riddled, taking medicine, can't handle the lightest of stresses. I mean, what are we doing? Like, where is the army of do-gooding people? Where is the army of people that are willing to fight? There's no way you cannot not fight in this world. And so this chapter is also about that. What are you not fighting for right now in your life that is falling apart? Your marriage, your income, your relationship with your parent, your relationship with your child, your relationship with your spouse, yourself. How many people are going to listen to this podcast and they're drinking and drugging and cheating and lying and doing all this stuff under the guise of sexual lust and, you know, feeling good about getting high and drunk and I don't know, gossiping and I don't know, not doing anything, not living a meaningful existence. Like, I'm here to shake people up. Uh, people read this book and I get two reactions: silence, and I get raving reviews. So if you go to Amazon and read the reviews of this book, you're going to hear a lot of people tell you they couldn't put it down and that they cried through the whole book and that it made them self-reflect and that they feel forever changed and it was life-changing. I have people that are quoting quotes out of my book to me in text. Every week I receive a picture of a page out of this book. And I know this book is going to win awards in my lifetime. I pray to God, we're about to go on a journey to submit this book to like 50 award book reviews. We're going to really push this book in the next year up a hill that it's never been pushed up yet. It deserves to have the light of mainstream world find it, because this book will change people. I think it'll save lives. Honestly, I think it'll change the quality of someone's life. I think it might save jobs and marriages. It might save children. You know, I think it has the capability of doing all of that. And so it's the people that are silent reading this are not ready for their own truth. They probably are way far away from this journey ever starting, but I still believe it'll plant a seed that makes them pick it back up years down the road when they're ready. I believe that. I believe if they read 4 chapters of this and set it down and they can't go further, one day they're going to pluck this off the shelf and sit back down when they're ready and read this book.